Today, as before, the cycle of the sun is the rhythm of our lives. And yet, thousands of years ago, at a time before calendars and clocks, the sun's influence was even more profoundly significant. 5,000 years ago, Stone Age farmers in Europe were the first humans to leave their mark on the natural landscape. Their building blocks were stones and boulders, and the structures they created were built in honour of their dead and aligned with their deity, the sun. The most spectacular structures are known as passage tombs. All over northwest Europe, archaeology has discovered relics of these Stone Age tombs. But there is a valley in County Meath, on Ireland's east coast, where the most outstanding examples are to be found. Bóinne, the Palace of the Bóinne. This valley is one of the world's most important archaeological landscapes. For thousands of years it was a place of ritual and ceremony, a sacred place whose living inhabitants shared their existence with the spirits of the dead. A symbolic bridge between life and afterlife, earth and sky, birth and rebirth. From the end of the last ice age, 10,000 years ago, Mesolithic hunter-gatherers had thrived among the forests and waterways of Ireland. Their settlements were modest, they didn't clear the land, so for thousands of years the country remained largely shrouded in woodland. Around 4000 BC, however, the seeds of an entirely new society were sown. Farmers, migrating west in skin boats from what is now Britain, brought livestock, tools and technology that would soon change the landscape. Those who found the mouth of the Bóinne and travelled inland on the tidal current found rich soil, abundant wildlife and clean water. And it was here, at the bend of the Bóinne, with access to both the sea and inland, that they settled. They cleared the forest, tilled and cultivated the earth, and in time a new landscape began to emerge from the old. As its people prospered and extended their reach, Bóinne became the centre of one of the wealthiest and most creative Neolithic societies in Europe. They traded with people from all over the island of Ireland and travelled abroad, exchanging tools, weapons, stories and culture. The most tangible legacy of those Stone Age farmers are their tombs, which weren't just places to bury the dead, but also focal points for the community. There are around 1,500 Stone Age tombs in Ireland alone, ranging in size and complexity, but the most intricate is the passage tomb. This structure consists of a stone-lined passage leading to a chamber where the remains of the dead were placed. The entire structure is enclosed within a large mound of earth and rock, surrounded and held in place at its base by a ring of large curbstones. There are around 250 passage tombs in Ireland, many of them grouped together in the northern part of the country to form cemeteries. The four largest run in a line from Carramore and Carrowkeel in County Sligo to Loughcrew and Bóinne in County Meath, where they found their greatest expression. Bóinne, located between the modern towns of Slane and Drogheda, is a place naturally set apart. Surrounded on three sides by the River Bóinne and to the north by the Bóinne's tributary, the River Mattock, the site is almost an island. To the people who lived here 5,000 years ago, it must have seemed as if the river itself had set the land aside for a special purpose. Over many hundreds of years, these ancient Irish farmers created an extraordinary ceremonial landscape. To date, up to 40 passage tombs of different size and complexity have been discovered here. Some clustered together in groups, others built on the remains of older tombs. The first tombs were small, but as the people became more prosperous and their engineering skills more refined, the scale began to increase. On top of the 3 highest hills of Bóinne lie the largest passage tombs of their kind in Europe: Knowth, Dowth and Newgrange. All 3 built on top of a ridge and visible for kilometres. They were not mausoleums in the modern sense, but places of worship central to the spirituality of the people who built and lived among them. Each one is over 80 metres across and stands over 10 metres tall. In a time before metal tools, their construction was a massive undertaking that would have taken several decades to complete, involving the whole community and all of its skills. Newgrange was built 500 years before Stonehenge and 1,000 years before the Great Pyramids of Egypt. When the Mayans looked to the skies and marked the movements of the sun and the stars with their own temples, Newgrange was already 3,500 years old. The passage tombs of Bóinne are the grand works of Stone Age culture, the cathedrals of their day. Neolithic people were careful observers of the changing seasons and the solar cycle, which begins on the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice. Every year, the first beam of light from the rising sun hit the earth at the same point on a natural hill at Bóinne. It was around this point that the chamber of Newgrange was carefully aligned. Before work began, the builders had to choose and then source the many different types of building material they would need. The large stones used to construct the great passage tombs were brought from Clogherhead, 22 kilometres away. At that time, the River Bóinne was tidal as far inland as Bóinne, so the great megaliths were floated in from the coast by raft. Once here, they were heaved or rolled up the hill from the riverbank. Over 1,500 were used to construct the passage, chamber and curb. Once the inner stone structure was in place, work on the huge mound began. More than 200,000 tons of small stones were used to raise the mound 13 metres high and 80 metres across, all of it carried up from the river terraces in baskets heaved onto labourers' backs. 97 curbstones, some of them elaborately carved, were placed end to end to form a retaining wall around what would be the circumference of the mound. The gleaming front of the monument is faced with white quartz brought from Wicklow, 80 kilometres to the south, and small water-rolled granite stones collected from the north shore of Dundalk Bay, about 50 kilometres north. By using stones from the furthest reaches of their territory, the builders may just as well have been asserting their dominion as adorning their monument. Whether this was done for the benefit of locals or to impress others from afar, we can't really be sure. In the modern age, Newgrange, like the other tombs of the Bóinne Valley, are a tangible link to the ancient past. But they also represent traditions that persisted for thousands of years after they were built. As the millennia passed, other peoples were drawn to Bóinne and continued to worship there, building new temples while honouring the old. About 1,000 years after the building of Newgrange, around the time when the first metal tools began to appear, a 100-metre ring of wooden posts was erected in the shadow of the great mound. Later, in the Bronze Age, another very impressive monument was built here, a circle of huge standing stones, the remains of which can still be seen today. By the time of Christ, Newgrange had become a sacred Celtic shrine, the dwelling place of their chief deity, the Dog the Mór, and his son Aengus. Around this time, the High Kings of Tara associated themselves with this monument and claimed divine ancestry by this connection. Though the Romans never conquered Ireland, they maintained trading and cultural links with the country. The greatest collection of Roman artefacts ever discovered in Ireland was found at Newgrange. These coins and jewellery are thought to have been votive offerings left by Roman visitors, perhaps paying homage to Celtic gods or honouring their own deities at this sacred place in a far-off land. As the centuries passed, Newgrange gradually became a place not for deities and heroes, but for tales of magic and superstition. However overgrown or overlooked, it never completely disappeared from view or from folklore. In the old tales, it's never referred to as a tomb for the dead, but as a house for the spirits. In 1699, just after the Battle of the Bóinne, workmen quarrying for stone at Newgrange uncovered the entrance to the tomb and became the first people to set foot in the passage for many thousands of years. Once more, the great mound entered the consciousness of society, but it would be another 250 years before its true significance was brought to light. In 1962, the renowned archaeologist Professor M.J. O'Kelly started excavation at Newgrange. Over the next 13 years, he excavated the site. When he began to restore the exterior of the mound, he found that he had a ready-made guide. Though they were 5 millennia old, the curbstones that surrounded the monument had never moved. Examining the curbstones, Professor O'Kelly uncovered the elaborate picked-out motifs of Stone Age culture. Lozenges, arcs, circles, cup marks, and all types of coils and swirls. The most impressive of all, however, is the extraordinary entrance stone. It is regarded as one of the great treasures of European Stone Age art. 5,000 years ago, when they entered the monument, people had to cross over the entrance stone. It is about 1 metre high and presents a considerable physical barrier. Long ago, it would surely have represented a psychological and ceremonial barrier too, the threshold of the other world. Even though the exterior of the large tombs of Bóinne have been reconstructed, the interiors are just as they were when they were built 5,000 years ago. The passage to the chamber of Newgrange is low and narrow, and just over 19 metres long. Imagine how a Stone Age visitor must have felt walking up the passage with a flickering light, knowing that they were entering the presence of the bones and possibly the spirits of their ancestors. There in the gloom, the loudest noise would have been that of the visitor's heartbeat, pounding with anticipation. It is wonderful to be able to stand in an authentic Neolithic space. When you look around inside the chamber, your eye is drawn upwards to the roof. It is a remarkable piece of engineering. Each stone is corbelled or overlapped by the one above, narrowing until the gap is closed by one huge capstone to form a domed roof 6 metres high. After 5,000 years, the roof is still watertight. The remains of the dead were generally cremated, and these burnt bones and ashes were placed on the basin stones that lie on the floor of each of the 3 side recesses. Left with the dead were their own personal ornaments, beads and pendants made of stone and bone. But other artefacts found in the tombs include fertility symbols, stone phalluses and chalk and stone balls. At Knowth, highly carved mace heads were also found. Perhaps the burial ritual incorporated these objects into the ceremony. Deciphering the mysterious Stone Age art of Bóinne is a challenge, made all the more difficult by its apparently abstract nature. Perhaps it was the act of carving that was important. Perhaps the carved motifs were thought to transform the stone into something extraordinary and otherworldly. Inside the chamber at Newgrange, some carvings are turned inwards towards the cairn, where they are no longer visible. Maybe they were intended only for the dead. The true significance may never be known. Just as the culture is lost, so is our ability to interpret it. And yet, extraordinary as the Stone Age art is, there was an even greater discovery yet to be made. In 1963, Professor O'Kelly discovered what looked like a small window above the entrance to the passageway of Newgrange. He called it the roof box. 4 years later, he became the first person in modern times to witness its purpose. It was designed to illuminate the inner chamber at dawn on the shortest days of the year around the winter solstice. To understand how this is achieved, we need to look at how the structure is built. The whole monument is built on the side of the hill. Seen from the side, the horizon is level with the roof box, which is in turn level with the floor of the chamber. At the moment the sun clears the horizon, its rays travel through the roof box, then down the passage and across the chamber, where they hit the edge of the basin stone in the back recess. As the sun rises higher, the beam of light moves across the chamber floor, down towards the passage, until 17 minutes later it leaves the chamber altogether. Every year, during the days around the winter solstice, a lucky few are chosen by lottery to share the vision that presented itself to Professor O'Kelly. They wait in the chamber in darkness, ready to witness what was planned 5,000 years before. What did this sunlight mean to the people who built the monument? It must be significant that the only time of the year when the dark chamber of Newgrange is lit up is the precise moment that the solar cycle begins again, the moment of the sun's rebirth. This light would have fallen directly on the remains of the dead in the basin stone, a sacred moment, a union of sky and earth, death and rebirth. Perhaps they believed that the spirits of the dead would be reborn with the sun, using the shaft of light to travel from this world into the next. Or perhaps they believed that when they placed the remains of their dead in the chamber, they were returning them to the womb of Mother Earth, from where they would be reborn. Whatever its meaning for the people of the Stone Age, visitors who still gather to watch the dawn are incredibly moved by the experience. It is a great privilege to be able to witness something planned so many years ago, to stand on the same hill and wait for the same event. As we stand inside and outside the chamber watching the sunrise, we can only imagine how the Bóinne people felt on those winter mornings so long ago. Even now, the experience forms a unique bond between us and our ancient ancestors. Even if we cannot see the world as they did, we can share in their enduring achievement. The Bend of the Bóinne is now recognised as one of the world's most important archaeological landscapes. In recognition of the international significance of Newgrange, Knowth, Dowth and the many other archaeological features in the area, UNESCO has designated the Bóinne area as a World Heritage Site, a place of outstanding universal value to humanity, one of the best possible examples of cultural heritage. The Office of Public Works protects and manages these sites not only for the people of Ireland, but also on behalf of the rest of the world.